Hi and welcome to Trial Packaging Your Game. What we're going to be doing this video is actually making a Windows executable here, which is going to run independent of the editor altogether. And you'll have an actual app here that you can rescale and move around. And crucially, you'll be able to start it. This was me hitting on the control pad, move the camera around, and then quit all just from the control pad, which is great. Or keyboard and mouse if you want. But the point is there's a complete game loop available. Let's dive in and see how that works. Okay, so the first place to start is to make sure that in our settings and project settings that we actually under maps and modes have the game default map set correctly to the main menu, because that's where we want to start. I think I'm going to set my editor default map to the battleground actually, just to show the difference. So the editor default map is the following. If I close Unreal altogether and then reopen it, and then what's going to happen is, because I set the editor default map to the battleground, that's where we're going to end up, which is fine for building this game. Most of the action happens here. When we play, we'll also be playing straight from the battleground. But when we build the game, and that's what I'm going to want you to do in this video, you can either do it with me or you can wait until the challenge in a minute and do it for yourself. What we're going to do is we're going to package the project for, in this case, Windows for me, 64-bit Windows. And I'm going to pop it in my downloads folder and just let Unreal go ahead and package this. So we're actually going to be making a standalone game here that we can run. So almost a shippable game, not quite a lot more to do. So if we just watch in downloads what comes in, let's see what actually happens, because it's quite interesting to see what it actually produces. It's not currently appearing in downloads for some reason. Maybe it hasn't refreshed. Here you go. So you'll find yourself a folder called Windows No Editor. It's still building, but there's a folder called Windows No Editor. And what have you got in there? Well, let's look at the size of these things. Actually, let's use tree size, useful little utility I have installed. Tree size free, there we go. So most of it goes in this Battle Tank folder, 650 meg in the content, and then in a pack, it makes this content pack, which contains all the assets, basically. And there's a binaries as well, which there has an exe in it. And then you've also got an engine folder, which includes the parts of the engine that you need for this game to run. So all in all, you end up with this lot, and what you want to run is this top-level battletank.exe. And with any luck, it'll go to the start menu, or the main menu as we called it, because that is where we decided to go. If you check the scaling, then this is all working. Then we start the game. Now the scaling, by the way, in the game, we haven't really thought about, but so far it's working fine because it's just rendering a 3D scene, so the scaling will work. And that's it. So you can close the app by either hitting the escape key. Is that working? Let me try again. Let me run it. Start, and I'm going to try the escape key. No, the back key on the gamepad is also not working. Okay, so we need to sort that out because I did want a way of getting out of the game. Let me make sure before I go and sort that out that we can get into the game. So I'm going to push A on the gamepad now. Yeah, so A is working, but the back button isn't. So let's go see what's wrong. There's something simple. In the project settings, let's start at the beginning. Input, quit is either the escape key or the gamepad special left. Great. So now what we need to do is make sure that in the level blueprint for this, we actually have a input action on quit. Yeah, input action quit. We quit the game. Yeah, and the quit preference is quit. So that should be working. Let's try it from here, from the preview. I'm going to hit escape, and it does stop. Also going to hit the back button on the controller, and it does stop. So I'm not sure now why it's not stopping when we packaged for the Windows. Let's just try repackaging. Sometimes it can be a little bit quirky like this. We just want to make sure that we have a fully playable stand-alone game for this video. That's the purpose. I just want you to get used to packaging really early for testing, because even though the editor is supposed to preview precisely what the game would be like when it's running on the target machine, you can't be sure that it's doing that perfectly all the time. It's a very good practice to regularly package and check. And this just seems like a good time to do it, especially as we're dealing with esoteric things like bindings of these controls and exit conditions. So let's try running again. I'm picking up my gamepad, I'm pushing the A button. We're going into the game, I'm going to push the back button now. And it's still not quitting. No, okay. So we still need to do some work. Now this is a slightly strange error, and I believe the reason for it is as follows. Let's try. If we start in the main menu here, and we run the game, and I hit A, and then I check that I can move. You see I can't control the tank. Whereas if I start playing directly from the battleground, then I can control the tank, and that's because the input mode has defaulted to game only. The problem is this. In the main menu blueprint, when we set up in the beginning, once the widget's ready, we set the input mode to UI only. But when we hit the start menu and go ahead and open Battleground, we still have the input mode in UI only, so it's persisting through. So there's lots of places we could change this, but I think here is a good place to do it because it's right next to where we set it. So if you go to your main menu blueprint in the event graph, and there's a set input mode to game only node, let's set that. So what we're saying is if we hit the start button, then what we want to do is we want to open the Battleground level and then set the input mode to game only for the player controller. It's a bit ugly, this, but it's fine. In fact, if we move things around a little bit, we can prevent crossing, which is always makes things a little bit clearer. Okay, so we're saying that once we've opened the Battleground level, set the input mode to game only. Let's see what that does. It'll only take effect if you start the game from the main menu. We play the game, we hit A on the controller. We test that we have control, which we do. We may want to give the player an invert y-axis option later, but for now that's fine. And then I hit the back button on the controller and the game quits. That's great. So the final check is to make sure this actually works in a Windows 64 build. So I'll go ahead and just do the build. And that's that. So the problem was that the input mode propagated from the menu outwards. So we fixed that right at source by saying, well, as soon as you leave, go ahead and change the input mode back. All right. So just wait for the package to finish, test it out, and then we'll be taking it from there. So let's go ahead and run and have a final test. Start, control works, the back button works, and that's all without touching the keyboard or mouse. Fantastic. So if you haven't done it already, I want you to package for your operating system, set the editor and game startup maps, build for your platform, and test that it runs well. Try rescaling the menu. Try the gamepad only, see if you can get in and out of the game with just the gamepad. Of course, you'll have to double click it to launch it in the first place. And I'll see you in the next video.